I'm going to talk about the history of C#. Now that story starts back in 1995 with a language called Java. Welcome back to Narcolepsy Pumpkin. If you haven't done already, why not click on subscribe and click on the bell so you get notifications when I post new videos. I'm going to talk about the history of C#. Now that story starts back in 1995 with a language called Java. When this language was introduced, it pioneered the concept of write once, run anywhere. That meant that compiled code would run on any platform that supported Java. Typically, that was accomplished by having a Java virtual machine, and that provided a layer of abstraction from the running OS and the underlying hardware. By 1996, Java had gained quite a bit of popularity because of that cross-platform and ease of implementation, and that did not go unnoticed by Microsoft. Microsoft implemented their own version of the Java virtual machine, and they shipped that with Internet Explorer 3. Now this gave that browser the ability to run Java applets. And alongside that release, they also introduced Visual J++ as a language in its Visual Studio development tooling to allow the development of Java that ran primarily on their version of the Java virtual machine. Because the Microsoft Java virtual machine did not actually conform to Sun's standard, all this did not go unnoticed by Sun. Based on the non-standard implementation that was the Microsoft Java virtual machine, Sun moved to sue Microsoft in October of 1997 for incompletely implementing the Java 1.1 standard. This began an almost 4-year battle between Microsoft and Sun. While this lawsuit was going on, just to prove that the world of tech has a sense of irony, Microsoft was in fact winning awards for having the best Java support. And Microsoft had the fastest, until beaten by IBM in 1999, implementation of Java on the Windows platform. While all this was going on, Microsoft was secretly working in the background on their own virtual machine implementation. This originally went by the catchy name of Next Generation Windows Services, but was later renamed to what we know now as .NET Framework. .NET Framework is an implementation of CLI, Common Language Infrastructure, that allows code to run in a CLR, or Common Language Runtime. This is pretty much the equivalent of the Java virtual machine. The beta release of this emerged in mid-2001, only a few months after Microsoft settled its court case with Sun and stopped releasing its Java virtual machine. Because of their success with their Microsoft Java virtual machine, Microsoft had in fact built up quite a following of developers who actually liked the Visual Studio J++ offering, and they had their own, now .NET Framework. They needed to keep those developers they'd inspired on board, and to do that they came up with another language. They couldn't call it J++ because that would be kind of confusing, and they couldn't use any of the Java logos or names because that would reopen the court case with Sun. So what they decided to do was take the J, mash the two pluses together to get kind of a hash or a pound sign if you're American, and then call that JSharp. The really clever thing about JSharp is that it was not only source code compatible with Java, so it would compile standard Java source code into something that would run on the new .NET framework. It also allowed you to cross-compile binary code. So even if you didn't have the source code for third-party components that you'd used, you could get it to run those, again, in the new .NET framework. This gave almost exactly the same development environment and shifted them almost seamlessly into Microsoft's new ecosystem. The JSharp language, however, was only a transition. They needed something else to move developers into. And that language that they introduced alongside JSharp was in fact C#, a kind of intermediary language between C++ and Java that made for quite an easy transition from the JSharp product, and also a fairly good basis for people who wanted to do the new .NET framework who'd come from a C background. An almost genius language.